own. If ever there was a reason to keep Fix Your Life and Ayanla on this network, this was it. Y'all, let's get into this exhausting ass part 2 of Ready to Love reunion. Hey y'all, support this channel by smashing that like button. Your likes not only make my day, but they also tell YouTube that you also enjoy this content. Also, don't forget to hit the notification button. That way you can be alerted as soon as I drop a new episode. All right, y'all, so it's back like we never left, and we're back in the back of the Bellagio break room, and where it's supposed to be going down between Janelle and Tequila. Janelle still asking the same question of, do you want to fight? And Tequila giving us late knuck if you buck energy with full finger guns and all, honey. It was definitely given nobody was going to bust a grape at a food fight. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, both of them was going to be pulled away by security. It's just a tired energy exchange of a back and forth situation. And in it, we're seeing all these different things being thrown out. Janelle saying this is giving very much Fort Worth. I just want to say this for the people who are listening, who are from Texas, ladies and gentlemen. A few of the people in the back were also laughing when Janelle kept saying this was Fort Worth energy. Can y'all explain to me, is Fort Worth really hood? Because other people on the cast were laughing when she kept saying Fort Worth, and it made me feel like they know something that we don't know about the Fort Worth area. So drop down in the comments, because we all find the DFW, and I'm just trying to figure out what's really good. So Tequila's giving her finger guns. They pulling her away. Feathers is coming off the dress, child. It is a full mess. So while security is escorting Tequila out, Janelle is clapping, and somehow Sierra gets caught in the crossfire with a stray from Tequila saying that you can get it too. Very much reminiscent of when there was the argument in the lounge, and she said this to Jessica. It was all super confusing. No more confusing than this decor, because again, I don't understand what's going on here. I don't get what this set design is. I have been wondering why they don't give them themes. It makes sense if you're in Dallas, why we have a little bit of a country theme or something. I don't know who's putting these together. Sierra's trying to figure out, well, what has got to do with me? I don't have anything to do with this. And they escort Tequila out. So it's official. The fight that was going nowhere actually went nowhere. They escort Tequila out to the back of a makeup room, and Unique follows her, and she's comforting her and wiping her eyes. I was just happy to see, honestly, the comforting part, but I was also really just happy to see that they have a makeup artist professionally this year. I know the gels and the lights made the ladies look bad, but I was just happy to see that, because when I tell you Ready to Love has always been given skimp budget, for many, many, many years, a lot of the women behind the scenes were always saying how they had to do their own makeup for the set. They never had an ability to do their makeup on set, by a professional unless they paid for it. So I just appreciated the fact that that lady was minding her business, picking up her tools, but that she was there to help them out in the situation. Back at the casino, Sierra wants to know how she got into it, honey. When I tell you, Earth is ghetto, I want to leave. Earth is ghetto, I want to leave. Shout out to Akila here on YouTube. I will drop that down below, because that really, really got us through the pandemic. Sis's voice is amazing. Anyway, Sierra is saying this is ghetto. I can't believe what is going on right now. And Jessica is explaining that, this was something that was happening when, they were initially coming back from the set. And Janelle begins to say, yes, that this is something that was going on even before they came back, that she's not surprised about her energy. Now, Janelle, the feather situation was clearly something that you helped to perpetuate what was already going on. Let's be clear. Tequila was already ready to fight. She was ready to fight when she was on stage with Tommy. And when Janelle shut it down because she didn't give her that same energy back, she was feeling when she came back. She was rocking back and forth in it with Red. So it was going to be a powder keg no matter what. But Janelle did not have to light that match to ensure that there was going to be something. However, Tequila is a grown woman that's responsible for her own energy and how she moves in the world. Whether or not you're frustrated with a situation, that doesn't give you the right to explode. If we're putting that grown woman energy on Janelle, we need to put the same thing back on Tequila. Honey, it was a ghetto fight in the ghetto. And so Sierra says, I don't understand how I got caught in the stray. And Janelle basically said that that's what she has. And then all of a sudden, the man from the back lets them know that they have to move to production set. And it was so weird when they got back, y'all. It was hilarious. Also, why that man sound like the same people that be announcing the BET Awards in between commercials? So we back on the set of the Room Store. And production has called Janelle, Quentin, Marie, and Kat to set. And again, this man's voice is so hilarious to me. It very much gave you full NBA announcer tease. It was like, ladies and gentlemen, this is now your Dallas Mavericks. Anyway, Tommy proceeds to start asking them about their interactions on the show and showing the cabin time. When I tell y'all, the fact that a fight just took place and they act like everything was just normal was beyond me. It very much gave me, like, if you ever worked in retail or some sort of restaurant environment in the back and some shit go down, but the general public outside don't even notice it's happening, and they continue eating or shopping outside. It very much gave that. So they don't have no clue what's going on. It's like your boss just finished hitting somebody with like a spatula in the back, and it almost took them out, but everybody up front eating with no clue. So Tommy proceeds to ask them about, their experience in Ready to Love, and ask them about that tired retreat, and how everything started off, and all aspects of it, the good, the bad, and the spicy. And they begin to show us that title Airbnb with them non-matching fences in the middle of nowhere. And he's trying to get them to, obviously bond at the house, and how much of the house bonding like did not happen. And so Tommy comes back from that, and we're seeing like the entire part of the trip. And he starts to ask, like, okay, obviously there was some drama between Janelle and Kat. Where do we go that, things went wrong? And he asked Quentin, and Quentin says he doesn't know what things went wrong. Child, we all know what things went wrong. So Quentin, I don't know why he was lying. He said he doesn't know, and he doesn't, know what to think. And then he proceeds to ask Kat, how does she feel? Like, where did the tension come from between her and Janelle, like through this, weekend, and kind of through like most of the show to a certain degree. I agree, because Kat basically says that she feels that, it's okay for people to have a difference of opinion, but it's how you express yourself to people. And I believe firmly what she said in this moment. I feel like, it is about your thing. I don't play around when it comes to your tone and your delivery with me. So I absolutely understand any other person taking that approach when it comes to how we express ourselves with each other. Again, I still to this day defend my point that I don't know why everybody sat down and was sitting in that mess longer than they was. Because I would have been walked away way before Kat actually did, and that entire mess with Janelle. But she basically goes on for like a 5-minute spiel about how it comes down to respect and how you speak to me, and we can have a difference of opinion, but that doesn't mean that you can disrespect me. And really what she was talking about was in the house when Janelle was having a discussion about her opinion, and they were doing like some questions game, and then Kat went going to express herself. Janelle wanted to continue what she was saying. Kat wanted to interrupt because it had been a while. And, Janelle did not respect that. And I do agree, when somebody is talking to you or they're giving their opinion and people have been respectful about you giving your opinion, you have to, return that same situation if you want the conversation to remain respectfully. So I totally agree with Kat on that. There were no issues with what she had to say. You got to get, to order to get respect, you got to get respect, and ain't no playing about that. So then we move on, and Tommy goes directly into, again, what was the issue past the respect part of that conversation that you think led to the tension between you and Janelle. And Kat basically says that she feels like Janelle's being, is very belittling the people. They do turn to the peanut gallery in the back of the casino, honey, while they're passing around chips, and they agree, many people agree that they do feel like she treats them that way. And so Kat goes on to explain, I'm a respectful person. I question that, but I'm a respectful person, and I like to give get the same energy that I give out in return. Kat explains that her whole issue with Janelle is how she spoke to people. And I can agree, again, like I said earlier, that how you talk to people is going to make a huge difference on how they react to you, and specifically how much energy and respect that they give to you. So Tommy goes on to say, well, if that's the case, when you call her out of her name, I guess she cursed at her at some point. And she basically said, he said that, were you given the same thing that you're asking for? And Kat basically gives like I don't care shoulder. At the end of the day, if I feel like I was already disrespected, I'm not going to be respectful to you. And Tommy says, so how can you expect, he kind of goes into like, how can you expect that if you're also giving that same energy? And you know how I feel about this, y'all. I have said this throughout my reviews, and I have said this based on like the little catty stuff that I've also seen Kat do when it comes to Janelle and some of the other women on the show, or maybe even just Jessica. I feel like it's really, it's giving me Kenya and Marlo energy, and they're super exhausting. It's very much giving me Kenya and Marlo. It's very much that Janelle is Kenya, like she settled into her villain era energy, throughout this entire season. But Kat has that Marlo energy of, I'm trying to play innocent, like I'm just always with my nephews and trying to improve myself. But there was a lot of cattiness that happened with her too, where she would say little slick stuff out of her mouth regarding the women or to other people, where she would imply something. And it was only coming from her. Because even though, it was clear that Jessica and Janelle were in like their little clique, it was also very clear that Kat was trying to create a clique and bring Lee over to the dark side, which I didn't like. And she did further on in this episode, or attempt to rather. Has this one with her and with Lee and Aries. And I feel like she very much is the one in that group that's kind of like the shit starter. And even offline, both of these girls have been very vocal and very catty back and forth. So it just gave me Marlo and Kenya, and I was exhausted with that discussion between them on their reunion, and I was disgusted with this discussion on their reunion. I honestly just have to say that while I do agree with Kat about the energy, I also feel like, Mama, you have to be looking at the mirror because the call is also coming from inside the house. So we think that this whole segment is over because when I tell you I was exhausted, and then Janelle comes in trying to explain herself because Tommy says, "Hey, like, what are your take on everything? Like, how do you think everything went with y'all?" And she starts to go on this delusional rant, and I can't front y'all. I was trying to pay attention to this, but once I realized that we were going down this fairy tale lane of ridiculousness, I started to open up my Shein package. I can't front. I was halfway there, and I halfway wasn't there because when I start hearing people say, just off the wall stuff, I really stopped paying attention. But let me say this, and I did try to explore this deeper. I went back and watched the reunion, and I will say that part of me understands some of her energy, not the way she treats people, like that's uncalled for, but in terms like having this hard edge because of where she used to work and what she used to work in, specifically in PR and in fashion PR in New York City. And honestly, a lot of people make a lot of jokes about, NYC, but honestly, it is very much a city that if you are in certain industries, you will not survive if you do not have a tougher than leather skin. When I tell you, it is not a place for the weak. It's not a place for the weak at all. And many people come to these places, especially like New York and LA, and they do not survive. And they go running back home to wherever they were from because it's a very different beast and animal. And specifically working in like media and PR, it is very, very, very cutthroat. A lot of times when you're like a publicist, especially in like a cutthroat industry like fashion, you end up being like the bad guy for your clients. And it keeps you could be in that mode all the time. I remember there used to be a show, I don't know if it was on Bravo or E, with this woman named Kelly. And I think the show was like So-and-so is a bitch. And it was her name. And she was like, a big person in like fashion, media, PR, and entertainment PR. And like there used to be this other lady that was like ruthless. And oh my God, I think she used to work for PMK. Either way, like she was no joke. She was like the Anna Wintour of publicity. And when I tell you she did not play, people were frightened. So I don't know if she's keeping that same industry. She's not even doing that anymore. So I don't even know why you still have that energy. That hardened edge isn't helping her, and it isn't helping her interactions with people in certain situations. It's obviously not affecting her business. She obviously is successful in what she's doing in the architectural world, specifically with interior design. But it doesn't serve you, mama. Like it doesn't serve you to be this hard edge for no reason. There are clearly deeply rooted issues that she needs to get on top of before she is really in a relationship with anyone. Now, I won't say that you need to come into a situation perfect because I don't know any couple that's perfect and anybody that's in a relationship that comes in 100% healed or perfect. If that was the case, then the world would be very different. And I'm sure we could talk to many people's spouses if they had no fair repercussions that could talk about who they met when they first started dating or married versus the person that they've been with for many, many years now. You all evolve and we all evolve in our relationships over time. And some of that is the healing love and, from our loved ones to understand us and allow us to go through what we are. But I feel like there's a lot going on about a lack of self-awareness when you cannot acknowledge that multiple people have experienced you in a way that is unpleasant. Now, if you're fine with that unpleasantness, it's cool. I do understand being your authentic self, and I will get on that a little bit later when it comes to Janelle. But I feel like, how can you ignore the fact that multiple people have experienced you this way, girl? Like most people are saying that they have experienced you being rude, being condescending, and not necessarily direct. And I hate when people try to marry those two things. They're not the same. You can be direct and not be super rude. You can be direct and not be disrespectful. You can be direct and still and assertive and not be, an asshole. And that's something that you need to take serious visual looks at and internal looks at, work through the dark shadows, work through the dark work that it takes to heal on the other side of that, because you are giving off an experience of people that's maybe not completely who you are. And I think it doesn't even have anything to do with those folks. There are other deep-rooted issues. When I tell y'all we need a Miss Van Zant one more time, just for the incense in the room, for some, we just needed some type of deep discussion about that, because I think there could be other things going on there. And ultimately, you cannot negate the fact that multiple people have experienced you this way and you leave them with an energy that is unpleasant. Work on it, period. And while we're working on it, can we not bring some words into 2024? When I tell you, between YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, every reality show situation. I'm exhausted with some of these words. When I tell you I am done in 2024, can we just not bring the word narcissist into 2024? I don't want to hear nothing about male identified in 2024. I want us to not be saying girls girl. I want us to stop saying mean girl. I want us to stop saying jealousy when it doesn't apply. I want us to stop. There's just a load of things that were jumping over this episode in this season, but also on the internet. When I tell you, like, please let's leave these words and these terms in 2024. We need to expand our lexicons. When I tell you, Merriam-Webster has a full range of things that we can say besides these same words. Because if I hit narcissist one more time, being misapplied on every simple occasion. When I tell you the DSM is long and has so much length to it in terms of what things could be applied if we are properly diagnosing folks. But we please, let's leave some of these words in 2023. So y'all, we finally done with the Kat and Janelle drama. And next up, Tommy mentions that Chris is coming to the front. And when I tell y'all, Chris was so happy to be on TV. When I tell you that fresh Beijing and the manicured nails was so excited to just be on camera. Honey, if this is a man that doesn't love anybody's podcast, it's certainly the one right here. So Chris 1.0 was next up on the screen. And, we're going to talk about his connections and, of course, his drama with Jessica. All right, so we back from the commercial. And now there is Chris, Lee, and Kat on one couch. And we got Jessica and Maria and Aries on the other couch. I'm not really sure why they brought Aries out here because I don't even think she really said anything. Again, they just got people empty on the sofa. It didn't make any sense. Anyway, we get into Chris's storyline, and again, they obviously show some of the dates or connections that he had, and they obviously show the biggest thing, which is him and Jessica and all of the beef. So they start having a discussion about, how Chris ended stuff, because there is a scene where, well, actually, it was at the end of the last episode where Jessica's having a conversation in the ladies' lounge about how she experienced Chris and that Chris was the person that ended up saying combative. And in chorus, Lee, Kat, and Aries all said, well, he didn't say that. And to me, again, you know how I felt about that? If you go back and watch my review, I said I did not understand why they felt the need to step up and speak up for Chris, not knowing what the experience had been with Kat, which was a lie, and he did lie to them. So lo and behold, so Jessica says, well, when y'all watch this episode, y'all going to see, they're going to bring this back, and it's going to show that he lied to y'all. And so they're like, well, we're fine with that. So of course, because he said he didn't say that. So of course they showed during Chris's package that he in fact did lie to all three women when he said that he did not say combative, because they show him talking to Tommy when Tommy was talking to one in the men's lounge, and he did mention Jessica as combative. So they also showed a scene where he went off on her, or they showed part of it where he went off on her, and not the full curse out, but part of it where he went off on her at the end and, essentially went off. And then the women are shocked because, again, we have to remember that a lot of this taping happens when they don't see each other. So they're seeing it like us for the very first times, a lot of times when they're seeing some of these clips, and they are watching the show and reacting right away. So people don't know how other people's stories have ended unless they're telling their business or unless they hang out after the show. So they don't know this. And most of the group seem to be surprised when Chris cursed at her at the end. So now we're back on set, and Tommy is asking, so Chris, what's going on? You spent a lot of time denying that you even said this simple word, which was still a messed up word to attach to anybody, because we'll talk about that in a minute. So Chris, he says, well, why did you lie about it if you actually said it? And so he goes, well, I didn't say she was combative. I said that we had some combative situations, still lying, because he said it more than once when they were talking. And then he says that, multiple of the men have said it. Now, this is another reason why I'm not into Chris in terms of his energy, because he stays with a fib going on. Everything is only on how he perceives it. And very much, he will throw anybody under the bus at any given moment if he thinks that it will help save him. And what was crazy about that moment was that when we were back at the cabin, when they were in that tired ass Airbnb, and they were having a discussion after the whole elimination situation happened, and Maria is the one who used Chris's word to describe Jessica, or why she was being eliminated based on what the men were talking about. So we're going to always, they went back into the cabin. They started having this discussion about who said combative. And immediately Chris said that all the guys said it. And Phil was the first person that jumped up and said, no, we did not all say that. He said, I never used that word for you. He said, and then Quentin said the exact same thing because none of them had experienced her that exact same way. So it was like they didn't have that. They didn't have that shared experience. So to say that we all said she was combative at one point in time didn't make sense because they weren't even one all into her as far as dating was concerned. They had their pairs. Phil had Aries, Quentin had Janelle. They all had their own people. Plus, Phil was very clear to say that I didn't experience you that way. So I can't say that that was how it was. And it was only about 4 of them in the group at that point when they were doing the elimination process. It was Chris, Marie, Quentin, and Phil. So if Phil and Quentin are saying, I didn't describe you like that, and Marie, we know, didn't call her that either, then that means it was just you, Chris. Own that. Accept that that was the situation. He was trying so hard to not look a certain way. And this is what just gives fake energy with him and me. So they go on to talk about their experience and how everything was going. And Marie jumps in to remind that you did in fact say that. And then you lied when you were asked that question. You omitted it, then you lied to these other women. And that should be a red flag to any woman, that if a man is going to lie over something this simple, this minute and small, and let me be clear, I don't want to diminish the importance of not calling somebody or attaching a word to someone that doesn't really fan out, but just if he's going to lie about something that small, please believe that as you get into a relationship with somebody like this, if they could lie to 3 different women to try to make themselves look better or look like they're not the guilty party, imagine what he will lie to you about in the future and how much that will expand in your real life. So I just want people to be on notice about that. I appreciate Marie for stepping in and defending Jessica about the fact that, hey, you said this about this woman. Don't try to throw us under the bus and make it seem like we were all saying the same thing. And then you double down on not saying that you were lying, even when they showed you the tape. So then Tommy proceeds to ask Chris about the whole, he chastises Chris a little bit and just says, chastise is not the word. He just basically tells Chris, like, look, I didn't appreciate how you talked to the sister. At the end of the day, even if you weren't feeling the situation because you were being eliminated, it was no reason for you to disrespect her. And then Chris goes on to say that he agrees and then gives like a half-ass apology saying that, he apologizes for what he said, but not how she made him feel. Everything about Chris's responses is always it's the other person's fault. It's not me, it's the other person. And this really harkens back to me with the date that they had with his ex about like how she felt about the situation, but not really taking ownership as to how much he wasted her time in that relationship. That lady that was the perfect quiet one, I know Chris loves a quiet voice, honey. He don't like nobody speaking above an octave over him. So, we got to keep it low. I think I'm way too loud right now. So Tommy goes on to say, like, that was just still inappropriate. Chris says he agrees and he apologizes even now. And Jessica says, well, the issue really came into the fact that at the end of the day, why did you deny this for so long? And like, you didn't really have anything to back it up. So then Chris goes on to say, well, the reason that he got emotional, because Tommy asked him why he got emotional, was because he knew he was sitting in front of someone that wasn't trying to understand who he was and who had several issues on the show with different people, which we haven't really confirmed that with a bunch of different folks. It's certain women that Jessica didn't get along with. And I'm sorry to say this. I know that people are trying to make this seem like it should be a sorority. I've never encountered any large group of women where everybody was perfect friends and everybody's BFFs at the end. And we weren't going to have this with the Ready to Love cast that we have now. There were going to be women that felt each other and that didn't feel each other. And I haven't really seen any stark standouts with Jessica on set on this show past like today, where we saw that she was going at it with Tequila back and forth, and any of the other women, no more than anybody else was doing back and forth. So I still don't understand this dynamic, because what was weird to me was when Tommy said what he said and Chris said about the emotional part. You were being eliminated, sir. That's not her fault. Everybody had to vote to eliminate someone. Jessica didn't have the final vote, and there were enough people to veto that situation. Even if you feel like Jessica and Janelle were an alliance, they weren't enough to vote Chris off. That means multiple people had to vote him off, or enough people had to vote him off for him to not be on the show. He had no connection with Aries, and she was completely into Phil. She didn't even care that he was at that cabin, child. And then the thing about it that was also really awkward was that Jessica goes on to say that, Chris says, we didn't have a connection early on. I felt like they kept trying to force us together. And Jessica agrees with him and says, that's why I told them 5 weeks, into the situation, there's not a connection here. And I found that interesting because at that point, Lee and Kat are sitting there actively listening, and you could tell they didn't know any of this information. And so she said, I went to Tommy and them and I said that. She said, I even said to them, like, go on and find your connection with him. Because if y'all remember, they did keep recycling Jessica in a moment. And we could tell that they didn't have any chemistry going on. And they even made her be the one to sit with Aries and him on that breakfast date when he said he wanted somebody with servitude. And his ex said that she served him and he still didn't marry her and wasted her time. And that he wanted somebody who was quiet and soft. Because, they like to use soft when they just want somebody that has like a diminished capacity in terms of being able to assert herself. There's a difference between a man wanting somebody who he feels like he can be vulnerable with and who he feels like she can be vulnerable with him. Women will naturally go to that space a lot of times when they feel safe and they feel secure in their relationship. So you don't have to cosplay at being soft. When you hear some men allude to the fact that they want somebody soft specifically, but the way that they move in the world and when they say things like they don't think women are good leaders, that's not the type of soft that he's talking about. So for the people in the comments and in the chats is going to co-sign and say things like, well, I understand being soft. Everybody doesn't want somebody that's direct or aggressive. Notice the difference of the type of man that's saying it. What does he bring to the table besides, his wallet? So he goes on to say that, that's why he wasn't feeling her. So you could tell that the people on the set are starting to hear this for the first time, that Jessica wasn't interested. And I'm not shocked about that, because if y'all remember when Sierra got eliminated, she was very clear about the fact that she wanted to leave way before then. She actually wanted to be at Coachella. She said that online. She was trying to leave way before then. And they tried to force her onto that vacation because they wanted to keep the storyline going. Mari having this additional connection that, we'll see where it goes. So I honestly believe her when she said that she was not connected and they kept putting them together knowing that they really didn't fit. Anyway, while they're talking, Jessica then proceeds to say that, hey, I told y'all I wasn't interested in that. And I even told the other ladies, like, go ahead and explore your connection with him. Did I not? She points to Kat and to Lee. And they both kind of stay silent. Now, I'm going to say this again, because I feel like they were trying to pull my girl Lee to the dark side. Lee almost seems like she's about to speak up, but then she stops because she's sort of, I think, catching on to the story. Kat is saying, well, we're listening to the situation. So Jessica's like, well, y'all on mute now because y'all were very vocal for him. Y'all were giving in vogue when y'all were defending him about the fact that he didn't say the word combative, but now y'all super quiet. Kat then decides that she wants to bar back and forth with Jessica about the fact that they are remaining silent because we have the right to remain silent. I don't have to say anything to you situation. All she was pointing out was that she did assert to them at some point that Chris wasn't her person and she was fine with him moving on. Again, shows me why Kat really is Marlo. Going on to extra endings at this point, and Kat is still doing this back and forth simply because Jessica said mute. Let it go, girl. Lee wasn't affected. And in fact, I feel like Lee started to feel really empathetic towards Jessica when she realizes that they probably did jump too quick to jump on Chris's side for something. And he did lie to all three women about what he said. And that them staying mute helped to solidify, staying mute was a little bit shady when you think about it, as they started to hear more of her story, specifically because, and I believe the reason that they stayed mute was because they started to hear more of her story, but they also did not want to lie on camera because they didn't know if production had footage of Jessica saying that to them. And if you say no to that, and then 2 minutes later, production pulls up a clip showing that she did in fact say that, then they would also be on the Chris side of things. But I genuinely feel like when it comes to Lee, she was thrown for what was being said when they were talking. And then sort of hearing Chris again try to explain himself out of the situation and say, well, I don't feel bad for what I said, but at the end of the day, I'm going to apologize to her anyway. Then what the hell was the apology for? When you say I'm sorry, you mean I'm sorry and that's it. You're not nitpicking apart why your sorry happened. When I tell you, Tommy was like, look, just agree to disagree and get the hell out of my face. And I could completely agree. Now, on to one of our favorite couples who were until they weren't. We now have Aries and Phil out on set. Honey, everybody else who was stressing the hell out of us is back in the back, sitting in their little corners having chit chats. And so they have a weird setup where Aries is on one couch and Phil is on the other couch. But what they did smartly was that they didn't have anybody else out there. I really think that they need to keep that same energy with a lot of these reunion shows when unnecessary people are out on set. They needed to do this same setup when Ralph was out talking to Drew instead of having all them women out there in that awkward ass spacing. It just caused too much friction and drama, and it increased like the fake dramatic energy that I think would have been a little bit lower level and normal and human. about their story. And so I appreciated that they just separated the two of them and had this conversation with Aries and Phil. So we go into the whole conversation with Aries and Phil and how, their story started and how beautifully it blossomed, but then came to like a very sharp end when Aries started to discuss the stability issue for her. And we know like a large part of their discussion has been that, Aries has felt like, Phil needs to be more stable in that he has different dreams than what her lifestyle lines up with. I don't obviously have an issue with the fact that Aries was just saying like, hey, where he's going, I'm not necessarily headed in that same direction. I do think, and she did acknowledge this, that the word stability was problematic because the man has a job. And apparently he's held his job for many years. He works for a Fortune 500 company. He works for an established Fortune 500 company that ain't going there no time soon unless we all stop eating. And so it's clear that he has a supply chain job in logistics and has worked for that company for a while. He's stable. He has the kid. We haven't heard anything about him not taking care of his kid or anything like that. So using the word stability to describe it to me is the very same problem that Chris used with Jessica with the combative situation, especially because when Tommy asked him, what examples that you have to show that she is not combative, he couldn't give any. He just kept conflating other outside issues that had nothing to do with actual examples between him and her that she was combative. And that's very similar to me on how Aries dealt with Phil, where she didn't really have any like specific examples. And that's what Phil was trying to get at. Like you saying stable. So she did bring up an issue where she felt like he had other dreams that he was interested in pursuing that she felt like may not be something that she could deal with in terms of like, would that take him out of the job he has? And I absolutely understand you can be in your life space and not feel like, you're interested in somebody exploring that. But I will say this, ladies, be very clear that just because you're married or you meet a man who's established, it doesn't mean he's going to give up dreaming, and neither should you. And when I say dreaming, I just mean that your job, especially if you don't have a job or you're not an entrepreneur doing something that you love, and even in that, sometimes you'll have different dreams. You will not probably want to stay in the same place forever. Nobody lives their life in this some people do live in a very sad existence, but in the humdrum mode of, I'm only going to want to do the same job forever. Many people change work in their lifetime. Many people are going to want to change jobs. Many people who had established careers may want to do something different. It is the reality of life. It is the ebbs and flows of life. You may, be working somewhere for many, many, many years, retire from the military, decide you want to be a professor, turn around and want to be a firefighter. Funny, it happens. And that means in your own situation as well. I think when people make those transitions, the important part is how, as a couple, you handle that and you talk it through. This segment completely reminded me of one of my favorite books. Look at me coming off of the road again, just to detour for a little bit. But one of my favorite books from Terry McMillan called The Interruption to Everything. Ooh, that book is so good. Oprah was supposed to buy the rights for that. I don't know what happened. I really wish she would get that produced. But the book focuses basically around a woman who she's in her midlife and she has 2 children and she's married. Her husband is like the breadwinner. So she's been like a housewife for a long time. And her kids are off to college now. They're like, doing their own thing. And she kind of has like a midlife crisis where she decides that she wants to do something creative, do some type of work. And she wants to get out the house from being a house mom. And we know that this is happening on her end, but we notice that on her husband's side, he's been working in this particular field for a really long time. And he's been a stability for their family and taking care of their family. But he actually wants to leave the job he's at and, branch out on his own and start his own thing. But he's scared to talk to her. She's scared to tell him fully about their situation. And we sort of watched them navigate that. And my point in bringing that up is to say that these people were 40, 45, 50 years old. And there was a spark one day that I just want to do something different. My life can't be the same forever. So I just want to say that just because you hear somebody say at that age that they are thinking about pivoting or changing careers, it doesn't mean that they're going to destabilize your entire process unless that person doesn't have a game plan. And sometimes you can help and be the strength in that situation on both ends. You could be the husband that supports his wife when she decides she want to go back to school. And you could be the wife that supports her husband when he says, hey, look, I want to start my own business. So I want to take that into account when we're hearing that, because that's where I felt like this was more so going, at least we thought, because according to Aries, she said there's more information that we don't know, and I didn't know what that was, and neither did she bring it up. So girl, why did you add it into the conversation? And can I say I was super proud of Phil in this moment when he's having this conversation. He said that he completely understood where she was coming from in terms of the fact that if there were doubts in her mind about their situation and she chose not to pursue it longer, that in fact he can't do anything but accept that. He's not trying to force himself on nobody. He is what he is, and If she's interested in that, she's interested in that. I know that one of the bigger issues in this season was that Phil may have wanted to get into comedy. Like he said he did comedy years ago, but that being on Ready to Love really resparked him thinking about doing it. And that was certainly a dream. He didn't say he was quitting his job tomorrow. He didn't say he was moving to LA tomorrow. But I also want to point out something that I thought was an interesting parallel. If you were really, really a fan of Ready to Love and you saw the first season of Ready to Love and you remember Mike and Shay, you know, Mike worked in import-export business in Atlanta. And, you know, being on Ready to Love made him inspired to want to like take acting seriously and like go out and try to do acting jobs. And he ended up becoming successful at it. Mike acting right now and is helping to produce films. Like him and Shane together no more, but that's what he's doing right now. He actually became a success at it. He's been on a few little BT movies, been on a Tubi movie here too. He's actually been on some bigger films, I think, in like some small, like very small speaking roles, but that's where you start. And then he's also produced a couple of projects. So what I'm saying is that, you know, you don't know if that person, if they're taking it serious and they have some sort of path and way, you don't know how that pivot could change your life. So you know, if Phil is interested in doing that and taking it serious, obviously he has a kid to worry about and, you know, making sure that his life remains stable in terms of his child and things like that. But I respect him for understanding that when Aries was saying like, hey, I have 2 kids, I have, you know, experiences in the past that do need some therapy, y'all. I said that multiple times. Married twice, 2 children. This is going to be your 3rd husband. At some point, you're going to need to work on the issues that, you know, are blocking you from dealing with somebody else in the future in terms of what those men put you through that you don't want to go through again. You do remember the lesson, but don't bring the lesson into the new situation so quickly. But I appreciate him for being very respectful. This is how you address somebody who is saying that they don't want you. And I feel like he did a great job of that, explaining like, hey, I still got my job. I'm not going anywhere. And the also weird part about this is they put us through all of this. And, you know, this is one of my favorite couples, y'all. Why they still dating? Why they still going out? Why they still hanging out? Like, if this is not a match, why y'all wasting each other's time? Or are you not? And y'all getting back together? Y'all got me stressed. When I tell you, if there could be an award for the most idiotic response to a non-problem, it would have gone to Kira. Girl, what was this conversation? It was literally my favorite part of the show. I will say this, y'all. But it was one of those things that was like, where was this going, Kira? This conversation with Marie, and like, first of all, you should know never to get involved into an argument with a hotep. It's never going to go well because they're going to explain and over-explain you under the bus. So I don't even know. That's the part of blackness that Kira did not understand. So I don't even know how she ended up in this ridiculous ongoing. The more she explained herself, the more idiotic that we all realized that this whole narrative was that she was trying to paint about Maria painting her to a box. And was everybody not confused? Because I was confused. I mean, her multiple level of explanations was a total head scratcher. And when I tell you, it very much gave me the energy. You know, you see online when they be like, these two, show me 2 things that give off the same energy. It was very much the same way that Unique went down that road of nothingness that we ended up with Kira in the backfield of disbelief, not understanding why this girl was just talking about anything. So she tries to come on and say that she feels like Maria tried to box her in with her blackness and the fact that he was trying to explain to her that, you know, she had to buy into the community in some way. And Maria goes on to explain like, look, girl, I'm not saying anything about your blackness specifically. I'm just saying that would it fit in with my lifestyle? And Kira's like, well, you know, you gonna want to say like, I have black family and I do black business. Like, I don't have black family and I don't do black business. And it was like, girl, you did the exact same thing to Quentin. She brings that up as an example and then proceeds to continue to go at Maria about saying that somehow she's the blackest person. She's one of the blackest people out here. Like, she kept digging herself into a hole. And it's crazy because, Kira, did you not watch yourself on screen? Did you not hear the words that were coming out of your mouth when you were saying them? Because very early on, you alluded to the fact that you come across as one of the, you know, if anybody would come across as like a white girl, it would be her in terms of, you know, the closest thing to that when she was trying to explain that she felt like Quentin didn't date white women, which was shocking to me that you even aligned yourself with that situation. Mainly because what I got from that when I heard Kira say it was that what trait was she stating would make her seem like a white girl. We know Kara was a cheerleader. We get it. And she's saying that being bubbly is exclusive to being a white woman versus being a black girl. If there are no upbeat, joyful black women, or was she trying to allude to the fact that she was articulate or, you know, spoke very clearly. You saying that that wasn't in relationship to Black girls. Like, it wasn't really clear what you were saying here, mama. And it just started to become a little weird when she started to go into like these other explanations. Marie was a little confused. Tommy was completely confused. And it was very much giving us the road to unique that led to nowhere. So Maria continues to defend herself and say, like, look, I'm not trying to police your Blackness in any possible way, but I'm just letting you know I'm from a small sector of Black conscious community that I don't think that you would connect with in terms of that. And when I tell you what a man tells you who he really is, believe that. I don't understand. And see, I feel like Kira and many people could be lost about what Marie was saying. And I completely understood where he was coming from. And Kira was really talking herself into a ball of silliness because he was trying to let you off easy, girl. He was trying to let you know that you're not ready for all this hotepian energy. But I'm going to try to explain a little bit more. So, work with me as we go through this little lesson. So I want to try to help our girl Kara out because I feel like she doesn't understand it. And I have a little bit of personal experience because I've dated a hotep for like 3 months in college. And I don't think that she understands the brevity and the depth of dating a hotep. I don't think that she understands the things that you're going to have to deal with. I don't think that she understands that you're going to deal with a constant array of incense all over the house, everywhere, at any given time. I don't think that she knows that you're going to deal with an excessive amount of, red, black, and green t-shirts and outfits and sweatpants and all kinds of merch that has to do with Africa and coming back to the motherland, like on a constant and consistent basis. And as we know, Kara don't love nothing more than them white boots. So I don't even know why she's putting herself in a situation when you get involved with somebody like Maria said that's into that. She's going to have to deal with a certain amount of Dr. Umar videos that's going to play in the background on a regular basis, all through any type of TV show she's interested in watching. Like, that's what you're going to hear on a regular basis all the time. Maria is not lying. It's really a lifestyle. And he wasn't lying to her. He was trying to understand that, look, this is not Abercrombie and Fitch. You know what I'm saying? On the weekends, it's very much given that we got to go make signs for the protests. And I feel like if you're more interested in going to Target on the weekends instead of arguing about the industrial prison complex, then Marie was not going to be for you. And that's all he was trying to get across to her. So dear God, I'm hoping that this gets out to Kara somehow and she realizes that that's all he was telling her. Like, sis, you're not ready for this situation. So we move on from Kara and Marie, thank the Lord, and we get into Kara having this double standard, or really, she identified earlier that she also, gave or boxed in Quentin when she stated that he, looks like somebody who would date white women. And so she goes on to say that she knows that she boxed him in, and Tommy says, where does that come from? And Kara goes, he's from Florida. And when I tell you, everybody and Tommy were like, what? The face drops were incredible. Y'all, I'm saying the background was one of the best. Backstage has always been hilarious. I think this is one of the best parts they added in the show because when she said the Florida comment, when they showed Chris and Leanne's face, that's how we was all feeling. And this is also what made me feel like we really missed out on Leanne. I don't know if some of y'all remember Leanne, but she got eliminated on the very first episode with the mixer. Talk about somebody being not self-aware, honey. Y'all remember she was talking to Marie and eating up a storm. Now, mind you, Leanne is a personal trainer. And they're having this conversation, and Marie brings up that his father recently passed. And when I tell you, Leanne kept talking and ignored what he said, there was no self-awareness. Like, I'm so sorry to hear about that. She just went on with her day. It was utterly hilarious. I feel like she would have brought some type of comedic energy to the situation. But anyway, they're back there. Everybody's face is super tense as Kara continues to explain herself. They're in total confusion. They put the camera on leash. She can't understand what Kara's saying. Nobody understands this. And then they bring back to Quentin like, hey, he's saying, so if you felt boxed in, how did you feel boxing me in when you just assumed that I started to date white women? And she tries to make some ridiculous example that when she said to him that she thinks he dates white women, it was a preference. But when Marie asked her if she was part of the Black community, which I don't remember him asking her that. I think he was trying to see if she was involved in community, that it was a character issue. It made no sense. Tommy decides to wrap it up and says, hey, look, Black people are not a monolith. You need to get it together. We all are different people. And then, she says, I accept. And clearly she didn't because the child backstage, it was even worse. So everybody gets backstage that was just up front. And Kara is sitting at the table crying. And Marie comes to her, he's very much giving the same empathy he gave to Tequila in the very beginning of the show. And it says, like, what's going on? And she says, I feel like you question my character. Really, girl, your point didn't mull over. Nobody was believing what you were saying. You weren't even sure what you were saying or what was coming out of your mouth. And it didn't give the energy that you wanted it to give. It's very much she left the same way Tequila left frustrated when initially Janelle Janelle didn't give her the energy she wanted on stage. And let me just say this to people in general. If you really want to frustrate somebody who's getting on your nerves, or if you really want to clear somebody, just do not serve them. A lot of times people say, I'm going to give you the energy you give back. But the biggest way to mess with somebody is to not give them any of that energy. When I tell you, they will be so flustered because they already was ready and set up to go. And if you just be like, girl, I'm good, they will be livid. So just FYI, if you really want to clear a bitch, stay silent. But Kara then begins to, or be calm at least. Kara then begins to cry and say, like, you feel like you question my character. And so Mario is like, look, I don't know what to tell you. Like, basically, I'm not trying to police your blackness. I'm not trying to say that you're not whatever. I just said you weren't for me because I'm on a whole different, you know what I'm saying, atmosphere in terms of how I move and operate. And I don't think that we would have connections based on how we talk. She ran this so long through the mud. He apologized multiple times. She eventually said that she accepted his apology. Please stop saying that if you haven't, because you said it on stage and you came back and cried. You're saying it again and you're still crying on this situation. So you clearly have not received what he said. Nobody was connecting to your idea of him questioning your blackness because nobody thought that he was doing that. But he is just saying that your blackness and his blackness is different past your skin color, and he don't feel like y'all gonna get down together. And girl, you are not set up for the hotel wife life. Now, if y'all can't believe I was already over Kara in this energy, then you know I was already over the energy that Janelle was serving when it came to this last segment. Why did they end off our night with this? It has already been a stressful season. And I'm just like, girl, we didn't need to not go back into the fairy tale land of delusion when it came to this energy. But here we are again. Okay, so I'm just going to say this on this final segment with Janelle and Lee and Quentin and this whole situation. You know, I've pretty much expressed myself throughout this entire season how I feel about the situation. I do feel like Quentin and Janelle had a genuine connection from the get. I do think at one point he had a connection with Lee as well, maybe very early on. But I think as they got to know each other, it just wasn't there. I don't think that either one of them was particularly great at ending the connection. I feel like Lee needed to, I don't even know if she needed to read the signs. It was clear that Quentin wasn't given the time that he needed to give way before the cabin in that situation. And it was also clear that him and Lee may lead very different lifestyles outside of fitness. It was clear when they met up with her friend at her house, Muffin, where Janelle was not present and they were having conversation, and it was clear that he was trying to get energy from her. Like I told y'all, very much, Lee's one of my favorite people in this season. She was a very nice girl, great body, we get it, but sis was dead bug energy all season long. It very much gave that, although she was saying she wasn't getting anything from these guys, she wasn't giving anything to us either. She didn't give light and airy like Sierra did, in terms like she gave us full energy, even if these people were not her matches. Sierra was breathing life into her date. She was, fun, energetic, and bubbly. I didn't get that from Lee. Lee was basically just as boring as Red was at that table. So when I tell you, like, when they were sitting at her house and Quentin is there with Muffin and he's asking, well, how did y'all meet? Well, who was the party girl when y'all were in college? Because they met when they, very early on when they were in the club. He's asking questions to engage and get to know her. And Leah's just giving dead bug energy again. And this was without Janelle being there. So the excuse that Janelle held back their connection the entire time, there were multiple times that these people talked on the phones where this lady was not on the phone with his man. It was giving just not being self-aware of the fact that you were not getting the energy that you wanted back from him, but that y'all probably are not a connection and never really were. I think that they were both physically attractive. I think that they were both physically attracted to each other. I think they both have nice qualities, but oftentimes these couples, you rarely see people that are with their exact same match. Then you normally aren't dating you. You usually want to date somebody who's different from you. You don't have to. Some people are very similar in their coupling. There are many couples who are yin and yang, honey, and it works very, very, very well. I had a coworker. He was a very outgoing guy, very, speaks to everybody, always a jokey person. And his wife was more of, the one that was a little bit more quiet, more reserved. She wasn't as outgoing in that particular way, but they both did enjoy going out. And so, like, just sometimes that yin and yang thing, it doesn't work. Even if you have similarities in certain things, it doesn't mean that you will be a match. And I did not see it for him and Lee way before the cabin. But I agree, Janelle was doing the most at the cabin. And this is another element to what everybody kept saying to get through your head, girl. If you got the man will let people know that he is taken. He had no problem shutting Kat down right away and saying, hey, look, I got somebody. I'm not interested. Let that man do that job of shutting that woman down. You don't need to be the one that's making sure and ensuring he does that. Quentin was doing fine with addressing these women the way that he was. He needed to assert early on that he could not do both things. Although I will say on that date with his ex, he did say that he wasn't doing a good job of keeping up with Leah and that he had ghosted her. That was clue number 2 that you and him were not a match when he had ghosted you, girl. I don't understand. So is that he didn't have to write it on paper and mail it or send it in an email to say, I'm not doing a good job of staying up and that I want to be chosen. So even that dramatic exit could have happened 2 or 3 episodes before then. But I do feel like production was forcing Lee down the same road they was forcing Sierra um old girl down, Jessica, to like sort of stay on the show for the purposes of the episode. Janelle then goes into this delusional rant about the back and forth or whatever with Quentin. Girl, we didn't need all of that. Quentin can express, so for himself how he felt about the situation, and specifically that you weren't driving the boat to try to get him around from other people. Because at the end of the day, he didn't really have a connection with Kat. He didn't have a connection at pickleball, and Janelle was all the way across the table with Herbert talking about whatever. So I just feel like it's one of those things where you can't use that. But Janelle was also being extra in terms of at that house, making sure that her presence was constantly felt. And honey, when you're left from a place and your presence is felt by a man, he will let you know. I don't know how many times somebody got to remind you of that. When I say 1-800-BETTER-HELP is waiting for your call. That being said, Tommy then proceeds to ask, Lee, what's her situation now? She's talking to people. We get the whole, yes, I'm dating people. Of course, I'm dating people kind of energy. We then go on to find out that Quentin and Janelle are slowly taking their time with each other, that they ultimately, they did, go hot and heavy, I guess, for a minute. I don't even know if that's the case. And there was a genuine connection there. I do believe. Will it end in love, marriage, whatever? Who the hell knows? Honestly, I don't care because this season has been atrocious. Child, when I say by the end of this series, we were all Sierra. I don't know what I just watched. I don't know if we can get reimbursed for our time back for all these weeks on. I want to run it up on the numbers. All in all, this season was one for the books, and I do mean those free books that they give away in front of the library because it was trash. Anyway, y'all, thank you for joining me. I love y'all so much. Don't forget to drop a comment down below. Let me know how you enjoyed the season, how you enjoyed the reunion. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.